In this lesson we're going to take a look at the first and second string, some of the fast dynamic leads we've been doing, but further along the neck. And we're going to look at how to solo on one string to get the maximum amount of phrases without having to go too far. Now looking back a little ways to this one, we can do something very similar by playing our 3-note pattern and then sliding from the 8th fret to there. Gives us a rather similar phrase. Again. You can hear it's a lot like. Also, if I move way down here, remember the high slide we did, which took us down to this position, which was a duplicate of our pentatonic scale, admittedly with the frets all kind of close together here. We can go high slide, and then down the connector to some of these nice wailing high melodic phrases. Some of the fast ones, where I suggested assigning the little finger, might be a little bit awkward because the body of the guitar is joining the neck around here. You may want to try this with just one finger. I might also point out too that a lot of times when you're playing in this position, you may want to really stretch out some of these notes and really make them cry and sing. And reserve the fast dynamic runs more for down here because they're a lot easier to perform than they are down here. I mean, it can be done, but there's a bit of a squash taking place. At this stage of your musical development, you may have discovered that a lot of the times when you're soloing, you get quite frustrated because you feel like you're stuck in a rut. By that I mean you do the same patterns over and over and over again, and it's hard to break out of them. Well, one of the things you can try and do is to just focus on one string and try and make as many phrases up as you can without having to think about going to the next string up or below where you're at. Let's take a look at that now. Now I'm back in the mid-range. Let's look at our very first original 3-note pattern. Now, here's an example of being stuck in a rut. You're on this note here, and you think, well, I can go to this note, I can go to this note, and oh, behold, I can bend. And then you make your way back, next thing you know, you're back on the 4th string, wondering where on earth to go next. We talked about pedaling, breaking things up by staying on one string and playing rhythmically. Now, why is it that the mind and the eyes tend to go into these preset patterns? Well, the first answer obviously is because I've taught you to do that. I've suggested building up these melodic phrases simply by using simple 2- and 3-note patterns. But what happens is you start to get addicted to some of these patterns and pathways, and it's hard to think creatively. In other words, if you're here, you go to your bend, and you wind up quickly resolving everything to this big chord note here. Now what I'm suggesting you do to break out of the mold and to creatively stay on one string is to find combinations on the 3rd string that you can stay on and exploit and milk for all you can before having to land on this chord note here. This is one particular way out of your dilemma, assuming you've got this problem, of course. Now, let's take a look at this one string. I'll call this the 5th fret, 3rd string. This is the 7th, and the bend we'll call 9, or the 9th fret, because I'm pitching the equivalent of the 9th fret. Now, there are 6 3-note patterns available to us on this one string. Let's take a look at them. We've got 5, 7, 9, which would be. We've got 5, skip 7 but go straight to 9. That would be 5, 9, 7. So starting with 5, we've got 2 of them. We've got 5, 7, 9 and 5, 9, 7. We've also got the option of muting the string before we bend it, rather like this, and just pitching the note as opposed to bending it. And let's look at 5-9-7. We play 5, we mute, we pitch it, and we go to the 7. Now the significance of muting the string with the right hand is it gives us the option of dropping a bend down or throwing a bend up when we're doing some of these combinations. For example, I may want to go and drop the bend down without having heard it go up. Anyway, let's go on a bit. So once again, we've got 5-7-9, 5-9-7. Then starting on 7, we've got 7-5-9, 7-9-5. And finally, with the other note, our bend note, we've got 9-5-7-9-7-5. Now you can hear each of those creates rather a nice 3-note melodic phrase. Now, to stay on this one string for as long as you can means trying to avoid rounding your phrases off to this note. Well, of course, it can be done. You've got this as a main chord note, and we've got the bend as a main chord note. So typically, visually, if your eyes are addicted to the pattern of always, say, starting there and thinking of going to here, and then going to the bend, it's good to jog your memory and remind yourself that, in fact, you can go 5, miss out the next note up, and go direct to the bend. Or to think, instead of always starting on this note, or indeed on this note, we can start on the 7 and get lead phrases like or. These are combinations you probably wouldn't ordinarily think of. Or. Now, while I've isolated them in terms of little 3-note clusters, of which there were 6 of them, it's possible, while you're jamming along, to stay on this one string. I wouldn't recommend playing any of these notes fast, but you may want to string some of them together without stopping, like. Now, notice I went around like 7, 9, 5, 7, 9, 5, 7, etc. It looked like I was caught in a bit of a loop there myself. But actually, that's not bad, because what you can do to break out of the pattern and do a directional change is to hit the same note twice. Rather like when we did the double 2-note pattern, where we went, and then we hit that note again, and we went back this way. So we would go, let's say, we'll take 7, 9, 5, for example. Now, here I go. At some point, I'm going to repeat one of these 3 notes twice, and I chose the bend at that point. You can do this with any of these 3-note combinations. Let's try another one. Let's take 7, 5, 9. Like that, we'll go. I doubled up on the 5. Now I doubled up on the 7. You really have to experiment with these. You can start out by learning and practicing the 6 3-note combinations, and then you can try taking one combination and then doubling up one of the notes. Taking one combination and then doubling up one of the notes. Play some of these 3-note combinations on one string, and as I go along with the backing music, I'll try and explain what I'm doing at the same time. I'm going to start out, instead of typically on this note, instead of doing this sort of thing, I'm going to actually start my phrases on a note you probably wouldn't think of using, mainly because it's been a passing note, which is this one. I'll go something like 7, 5, 9. And then I'll try and stay on this string, either to form individual phrases or to play continuously before rounding off. Finally, I had to go to the 4th string. You can only spend so much time on the 3rd string, but that's okay. At least I wasn't habitually going there right away. So I got to stretch things out there with that example.